This is Mindustry Hex PvP and playing on the Eviction server Erekir tile set. And today we're going to be watching overpowered units in action across two different battles. Here at the first look of the map, I can see the tree has spawned very close to me. This means that I need to skip tech and go straight for as much combat capability as quickly as possible because we're going to come into conflict quickly. So I've got my initial unit factory set up just for taking new space and speeding through, setting up the initial economy. A little bit of silicon, a little bit of graphite. Everything's got underflowing set up so that what doesn't get used in the factories goes for construction purposes. The unit mining is actually really important to do at this phase. With the amount of beryllium you need, these units doing manual mining is worth about 8 or 9 of those wall drills normally. And knowing that he's close, in case I expect him to rush too, I've started setting up little wall barriers just so he can't fly in unopposed. And here I'm setting up my first Elude factory. Eludes being the overpowered tier 1 unit. Let's take a look at Tree's base. He's got 2 stealth factories and an oxide factory, so it looks like he's probably aiming for higher tech. In that case, I definitely want to press a rush with low tech and do it early, especially since we've spawned so close together. His defense also looks like it is very vulnerable, and it's something I want to hit soon and as hard as I can. That bunker he's building with the beryllium walls is too far away from that core, and he's not going to have enough tanks produced to put firepower in it. Additionally, if I have eludes, they're going to be able to outrun all of his tanks, and so any sort of tactical combat should be pretty easy for me to win. Alright, back to work then. Now that I've seen what he's got available for defending, I want more unit factories immediately, and I have no desire to build any tech structures. So, one elude factory down with 3 producers, get a second one set up, and then I'll go back and take another look to see when I want to start actually pushing the attack. Preparing the doors on this wall so that I can leave. The life support attrition is the thing to worry about. So when these combats are going on, some particular to the server characteristics are units that travel more than 1 hex away from a friendly core have a random chance of dying. That's the life support attrition. And units that are in a hex when its core is destroyed also have a random chance of dying, the core explosion attrition. So there are some pretty strong reasons that you want to micromanage an army so that you use the smallest possible force to take over a core. And you don't want to stray too far from places you've already taken. So sending a few tanks up 1 hex to take that fallen core is expanding my life support range so that I can move closer to Tree's base for actually taking the attack. So I've got that core. He's amassed a few more tanks, but I've got some eludes that have come out already. And thanks to how fast they are, they can just fly in. Now, this is a bit of a stretch, this attack. They're completely untouched by the tanks in the bunker, but now they are out of life support range and they will slowly die. But while they're here, I can hit important targets. I can take out his power plants. I can take out his oxide. And probably the most important thing going on here is that is pulling his tanks away from his forward defensive position. So now that that's completely empty and he's distracted by this, I can send the rest of my reserves to actually take that intermediate hex. And once I hold that, then I don't have to worry about life support attrition. But the dipsy do that I've pulled on him has really he learned a lot there. He hasn't played as much as I have when this game was played, so he gave up once I got everything around through there, and there's no other competition in this game. This game is over. I win. This is the second game starting out. Tree is present and green is present. Taking a look at the map, my spawn is in the upper right corner. Green, the main opponent I'm going to have to contend with, is in the upper left corner. And Tree is also there, but he's sitting this game out. So, seeing that my primary opponent is much further away than the game before this, then I know that I'll have more time before the actual conflict starts, and I'll probably want or need to go for higher tech options. So I will eventually want to put up Oxide and maybe further, and think ahead to wanting to do some T2 factories of some sort. The pattern that Green has gotten into is going straight for the tier 2 tank units, the Locus. That is the other currently obviously overpowered unit in its tier as far as the game is currently balanced. Locus are better at fighting everything tier 2. The only way to counter Locuses is either more Locuses or to tech up to something like either Afflict or the Titan turret. But in this game, I don't necessarily know that yet, so I'm going to try using different things against the Locus. Almost getting it, but not quite. Yeah, so going for Elude Factory. Going over and looking at Green's base, we can see that he uses a more tall, dense build order. He obviously put down his Oxide Factory very early in the game, and at this point he's gotten enough to build a couple of the large wall bores which have gone on tungsten. Since impact drills are very slow at generating tungsten, then that'll give you, 4, 5, 6 impact drills worth of tungsten just from that little patch of wall. And then he's going quickly to the combustion power plant, still on his building in his second hex. He's got one operating factory, and there's 2 more factories that aren't wired up yet that will eventually become Locust factories, since Green's go-to is making lots of Locuses. So at this stage in the game, I'm going to focus on generally building more unit factories. There is going to be a tech schematic put down at some point, and I also focus on diverting 2 or 3 or 4 units at a time to taking nearby cores, as that is going to give me more building space, more vents to put easy power plants on, but that also expands my life support space and denies it to other players. So like when we first come into conflict, I want my cores to be closer extended towards Green instead of being further, as that's a space that I have to churn through. Yeah. And there went my tech schematic, which Starts out as a silicon and oxide factories. And the point of that being is it's set up to accept a surge smelter when I feel like it's time to build that. But a surprise going on here is we're actually coming into conflict much sooner than I expected. I'd really be better off if I built another unit factory instead of putting that tech factory. We've already got 2 cores next to each other, and he's already shooting at something that I've prepared a little wall for. He's got a locus already, and mostly tanks. It's a bad trade to fight eludes against locuses, because the damage reduction from the locus armor versus the elude bullets is a pretty large penalty. But I'm hoping to make up for that by fighting on friendly tiles that I can build on and putting up walls so that those eludes are able to fire without taking damage. And then also potentially peeling off small amounts of units to extend the border closer towards his base, and maybe even do a dive where it can hurt his economy. So since I'm mainly relying on eludes, I've got a lot more mobility. When there are stragglers, I can try and hit them alone with a massed amount of firepower. And when I have a losing fight set up, I can pretty easily get away with it. I've also got some free reign to put up these defensive barriers to protect my eludes when we actually have more of a direct fight. But it is going to take a good amount of concentration and micromanagement that as those walls wear down, I want to move the eludes so that they're behind different walls. Another more advanced micromanagement concept here is that not only do I want to make sure that my main army is not in the same parcel when a core is destroyed, but if possible, I want to destroy cores when the opposing main army has a lot of units in that core so that they can be subject to the attrition. And so an expression of that might be doing a lot of damage to a core and then leaving it almost dead, so that when his army passes through that hex, I could rush in and attack it quickly with a small force and subject his units to all that damage. I'm also trying to work on extending my cores around the south here so that I can get closer to his base without actually needing to engage that force there. Now he's taking that as an opening to try and move forward, and now that this section of army is pretty isolated, I'm going to bring everything up and try and concentrate around and destroy it completely. And from my perspective, it feels like it goes pretty well. I don't have any walls to hide behind, so I am taking full damage during this, but that is an entire army and several locuses destroyed by tier 1 units, which I'm happy with. But his production is still going, and he is able to replace those. So I have a lot of sort of my production versus my losses balanced against his production and his losses. And I really want to try and keep his locust population down if I can. But now that I've got this core, I can dive into his economy, and he doesn't have any defense set up there, except what's being produced. This is probably enough eludes to take out that core, but I don't realize it at the time. Instead, I'm going for economic targets. His T2 factories, his power plants, and his oxide, although this is not his only oxide. And then I should take those wins and probably get out. So although economically that was a pretty successful attack, I didn't really get many eludes killed, which is the thing that is the most dangerous to me at this point. Another thing I'm doing poorly is I am killing that core with my main army there and losing a lot of net units unnecessarily. Well, he's figured that out, and he's moved his army out of a core that he's destroying. So now I've got the urge to set up another wall and battle line, and I'm going to need to do another rally to pull reinforcements, because as far as fighting and firepower wise, this is pretty outmatched. I'm going to try and make up for it with dancing around walls to keep my units alive and firing either over walls or over the core. And sometimes some of its units will get separated and I'll be able to put good damage or even take them out. But this is not a great battle, and I'm not happy to be stuck with it. Although the attrition roll really went in my favor there, since that took out all those eludes. I should leave more stuff behind to finish off that core and remove his forward progress. But I need to get the core next to his economy back down so that they can resume threatening his economy. He's only building stells at this point, and that's good for me. I'm sure as soon as that core goes down, he's gonna head to rush in. But it's also at this point that I'm starting to realize that my unit production isn't really keeping up the way that I want to. I've got 6 elude factories at 1 stealth factory, and at the rate that we're trading units, he's still keeping up pretty harshly. Though I am able to dive again, so I can retake down a lot of this stuff. But in general, he knows that he needs to stick close to the most important buildings to keep stuff alive. Now I would like to take that core to the left, as that would give me life support into his spawn hex, and that has more important economic targets that would be nice to take down. Like if I could take out any of his actual production buildings in the main hex, then that would be a big advantage. That's stupid. All the turrets are bad. I shouldn't even bother. Seeing the turret might be what draws him into attacking, but he's also got a much stronger force at this point. Like even perfectly controlled and always behind walls, it's just going to take forever for this many eludes to do meaningful damage to 4, 5, 6 locuses and those other stells. I'm just not getting replacements fast enough. So yeah, now that he's got more than 2 locust factories going, he's just going to outproduce me. And the attrition will eventually wear me down no matter what. But it takes me a few rally commands with not many reinforcements actually showing up before I realized that, oh, I should have built 1 more unit factory instead of what I did do. So I did do a good pull out before that core went down, but the attrition rolls did not go as far in my favor as the earlier one. do you have it in mind to continue attacking around, and maybe I could turn the corner to that left hex that is on the other side of his army? But yeah. Now he's got more factories and he will definitely outproduce me. He managed to keep doing some economic building while there was actual combat stuff happening. And in that case, well, eventually I will definitely be outcompeted. I am at least going to hang on until the first fight here happens. Maybe I'll build some unit healing too. That's easy to do in just sort of an isolated way, since some of these eludes are pretty damaged. And there I am, not remembering that it's ozone that goes into those and not hydrogen. So the hope is that if we can shoot out of this bunker well enough, then useful things can actually happen. The eludes are not good at focusing fire because the way that their shots arc out and do the homing. But I do have options for, even though he's broken in, I still have walls to move him behind. And now he's trying to do the calculus of how many locuses he actually needs to kill a core. So now that's gone. And my army is down to basically nothing left. He's still got 6 tanks and more being produced and arriving. And I GG it.